So as you all know, I came out of retirement, even though I wasn't in retirement, sort of like boxers do, to play chess. I haven't played a slow tournament in 6 months. And I played in the Thanksgiving Open after changing my mind 5 times. I took a half-point buy in round 1. If you were here at the previous lecture, you saw my game in round 2 with Mario. And this is my round 3 game with Matt Larson. I guess the theme today for the middle game planning is, well, in both games that I'm going to show you today, I advanced my pawns on the king side with, well, the main intent was to checkmate my opponent. But in more than one case, my pawns were used to great effect, not to checkmate my opponent, but to limit the opponent's pieces by gaining space. So sometimes when you're checkmating somebody, you don't need to checkmate them because you haven't sacrificed any material, you haven't given anything away. So you can just use your space advantage by moving your pawns forward to get an advantage. So I guess it's a middle game class, so we'll start in the middle game. Okay, there we go. So in both games, we actually played a lot of moves until there was a trade. And in fact, in the next game, we played more than 20 moves before there was a trade. So if you thought London was boring, then wait till you see this. Okay, now in this position, Black played an interesting move that he could have played earlier, but since I didn't play knight h4, there was no need for that. A lot of times in queen pawn openings, this bishop is sort of trapped on c8. It may have happened to you. And so when you play sort of a boring, Zucker Karlow like I'm doing, Black can sort of do whatever he wants, hopefully to his detriment if he's playing me. And here he got his bishop outside the pawn chain. On the other hand, that bishop could get trapped or captured. It's not going to get trapped in this variation, but often knight h4 is played, and I'll get the 2 bishops advantage. So here my opponent played h6, which explains, it gives him an escape square. And if you were watching my game with Mario last hour, Mario's bishop was on c4 and he retreated it to a2 in similar fashion. Other side of the board, other color. Okay, so since knight h4 doesn't make any sense because his bishop just goes to h7, I have to do something else. Well, the problem is when you play d4, d5 openings, somebody wants to put something on one of these squares with a pawn advance, and there's no way I'm going to play e4 because Black has too many protectors. If I play c4, I'm not really sure what my plan is. So I decided to play on the other side of the board, and I played in the center with knight e5, and I'll try to gain some space on the king side. My pawns could move forward if he castles king side, and we could try to attack there. Okay, now, one way to equalize in chess, which we're seeing a lot in London, 25 games were played up until this point in time, of which we have 21 draws and 4 wins. So those guys are good at defending. And it's unfortunate that FIDE has these anti-cheating measures. That's really bad for chess, because if you can't cheat and you're all 2,800, all the games are going to be draws. So we need to institute some cheating methods where some of the players can cheat sometimes. Then will be some decisive results. Okay, but since there's no cheating at the top level and they don't blunder, we just see a lot of draws. Luckily, this is the Thanksgiving Open. This isn't the London Classic. So occasionally mistakes are made. Occasionally, like every game. So my opponent could do anything, but he traded, which is fine. And then he saw his knight was attacked, so he moved it. And again, I can't play e4, but my opponent's bishop is pretty annoying on f5. And if that bishop wasn't there, I could start a kingside attack. So I played bishop to d3 and traded bishops. Okay, so now I'm ready to play f4, f5, and as Mario did against me, and possibly f6, which Mario also did against me. And my opponent doesn't have a lot of counterplay on the queen side yet. So what I was worried about is that at some point, black would play f5. This was what I feared. And then if I don't take it en passant, I didn't see what my plan would be. And then he could just push his queenside pawns. And I didn't see like what I would do. If I take en passant, and he takes with the bishop, and we trade bishops, how am I going to win if we trade all the pieces off? Now here, f5 is somewhat risky because I'll play queen h5 check, and you'll have to play king f8. I don't think he wants to play king f8. Okay, so he played a5, getting his counterplay started, which was really good actually. I played queen g4, just like in a game Mike Kummer showed. Queen g4 attacking g7, castles, and unfortunately, my bishop can't go to h6. As in the game we just looked at 30 minutes ago with Mike Kummer. Okay, but I knew I couldn't do that. I was going to play f4. And again, if my opponent can successfully play f5, then I'm just totally blocked. But if he plays f5 here, and I take, now your e6 pawn is hanging with check. So you don't really have time to do that. Okay, now here, and again, this is my student. He's been my student for 5 years. This is Matthew Larson. When we first started working together, he was rated about 1150, and now he's rated 2320. And he was in middle school, we started working together, and now he goes to Yale. And we have lessons all the time on the internet and in person. In fact, I had Thanksgiving at his home the day before this game was played. And we had a lesson the day before that. And sometimes he doesn't agree with what I say, and then sometimes he's right and sometimes I'm right. Usually we're both wrong. And when the game ended and we discussed the game, I said, wow, this move really surprised me, the move that he played now. And he thought it was the most normal move ever. Like, what do you mean? Like, what other move can I play? And, well, okay, the computer ended up agreeing with me. It didn't understand this move at all like I didn't. So 1 for me. He played rook e8. Or he made 7,000 moves in arrows game. That's what I meant. Okay, so that didn't work out well. Okay, he played, the computer was so flabbergasted it wouldn't even play. He played rook e8. Okay, and the idea is he wants to retreat one of his pieces to f8, simultaneously protecting his pawn on e6. So for example, he could play bishop f8 and then play f5, and I don't have any queen takes e6 anymore. Or he could play knight f8 with the same kind of idea, and then play f5, and his knight's defending e6. Well, computer's not a big fan of rook e8. It just plays on the queen side and thinks black is doing fine. But black's okay after this. Okay, and I played f5, and he played bishop f8. And now this was another funny point of contention we had. Sometimes people disagree. I played f6, which I think sort of mildly surprised him because I'm blocking everything up. But I thought I was taking so much space that he couldn't move, and eventually I would break through. It turned out we were both right. Because probably black's doing fine, but he sort of let me break through. Okay, and g6. And now I made a move rather quickly, and then I sort of wondered why I played it. And the computer doesn't like it. I played knight f3. I figured we got to bring some pieces over there, because can't mate it with no pieces. But the thing is, what am I going to do? So he was just thinking like, I can't do anything. And I was thinking, I'll eventually do something. And again, we were both right. Now, one of the things we discussed was something I think, again, I was right about, was there's a plan where white plays h5. And usually you have to play h4 first. But being a grandmaster, I can just play h5 in one move. Right. You agree, Danny? Yep. Yeah, good job. Now, he was wondering at some point in the game, why don't you play h4, h5? Now, there were two reasons. One is he could play h5 after h4, but that actually wasn't the reason. Okay, so let's pretend that black just does nonsense. So rook b8, h4, rook a8, h5. That looks like white's doing something. And I was like, okay, you play g5. Now, I don't have any pawn breaks, so if I want to break through, I better sack on g5, which looks like it must just win, because that looks really, really good. But it looks good, but what do I do? This isn't Bughouse. If it's Bughouse, then I'll take white. I can't do anything, and bishop h6 is the next move. and rook g8 is the next move, not a piece. So it looks like, no, he's going to play knight g5 and you're getting crushed, but I didn't really see anything. Well, if h4, h5 doesn't work, what am I supposed to do? Okay, so after I played knight f3, and I was thinking, what am I going to do now? I came up with sort of an interesting plan. My bishop on b2 isn't really attacking his king, but as in the Mike Kummer lecture, if my bishop can somehow get on the h6 pawn, that would be better. So I need to open up this diagonal. Okay, I need to play e4 at some point, put my bishop on that diagonal, put my queen on h4. All right, then I'm in business. Okay, so before the business starts, he plays queen b6, or so I thought. Okay. Queen to b6, attacking my e3 pawn. Okay, and I didn't like the fact that in a lot of variations, knight c5 is coming, the bishop can come in here, and I thought if his pawn was on c5, that would block two of his pieces. They wouldn't have access to those squares. So after queen b6, I played bishop to d4, which sort of invites him to play c5. Invitation accepted. And then I retreated, and I was like, well, my pawn's not attacked anymore. His bishop doesn't control these squares, and his knight can't go to c5. And I'm on my way to playing bishop d2, e4, and we'll start attacking him. Okay. And this is all fine. He played a4, attacking my b3 pawn. If it's free, it's for me. So I took it. And again, as Mike Kummer was explaining in the last lecture, there was a position where white had a queen on the queen side. Oh, I'm sorry, black actually was me. It was my game. Black had a rook on a3 that was defending a bishop on g3, pretty far away. And the same thing here, the queen's defending the pawn. So he plays queen a6, attacking both of my pawns. Rook a d1, and he takes my pawn. So who thinks that white should trade queens? Time for white to trade queens? I see a lot of head shaking. No, that's just because you're not feeling well today? All right. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to trade queens because then I probably won't checkmate him. So I played e4. Okay, now, I've explained this to all of my students. Someday someone will listen to me. Maybe you at home, although I doubt it. Normally, when player A beats player B, if you're watching a television show or a movie, the reason player A beats player B is player A is better than player B. So he always wins. Okay. However, in real life, player A beats player B usually because nothing special is going on, and then player B makes a horrible blunder. Okay. Player A could have also made a blunder and lost, but player B decided to blunder first. In this game, if you ask the engine who has the advantage, it says black has a crushing advantage because it doesn't think that white has a good attack because computer only sees the actual attack that's actually happening, not what you're afraid of. Oh no, I might get mated. Computer doesn't think about that. Computer says I get mated or I don't get mated. If you don't get mated, then you're doing great. And the computer's like, man, this pawn's a goner. That pawn's finished. And black can start pushing his pawns. In fact, computer says after b5, black's close to winning. It really likes to move b5. Now, my plan doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is very tricky. After b5, which is the best move, a normal move for white would seem to be bishop to d2, followed by my queen going to the h file. And then I actually do have a good position. But black has a winning tactic here. Computers like winning tactics. Humans, eh. What's the winning tactic for black? There's some guy at home yelling so loud I can hear him. They're not yelling here. Very staid here. Anyone? Winning tactic, winning material, taking. Knight takes e5, attacking my queen, and then queen d4 check. And black is a pawn up. This pawn on a2 is hanging. There's no attack. There's nothing. Okay. Now, so actually, white doesn't have a threat here. Now here my opponent made the losing move. And it actually takes engines a while to realize it's losing. But it realizes it eventually. Played the move d4. or he did nothing. Okay. And after the move d4, black doesn't have this counterplay. He doesn't have queen d4 check ever. And he's blocking the center. You don't want to block the center when your opponent's checkmating you, like the center open. Now my opponent thought differently, okay? Maybe he works for Apple, okay? And he thought, I want to take this pawn because I like taking pawns. Maybe I'll play queen c2 and take the pawn with the rook. But then there's some counterplay for white in taking these pawns in the center. This pawn can't take back because his knight's hanging. I'm going to get rid of white's center counterplay, and then I'll just win on the queen side. My opponent has nothing on the king side. That's what he was thinking. So he played d4, and I played bishop to d2, and now my next move is either queen h4 or queen h3, and he's in a lot of trouble. For example, if queen takes a2, queen h4, king h7, that looks like it defends. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I just take the pawn. And if you take knight g5 check, and I slightly prefer white. Slightly. Okay, especially since I have the white pieces. So that doesn't work. So instead he played the move queen to c2. Now, again, I'm sort of lucky because what I wanted to do didn't work, and after thinking about 8 minutes, the last like 40 seconds of my think, I found the correct move. And he never saw the correct move. And when I played it, he was like, wow, that's a good move. He was very impressed. Now, many of you will be super confused at these variations. I know I was. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to play queen g6 check at the appropriate moment. Okay, the appropriate moment is when this knight's not here, and then I could play f7 check, forking his king and rook, and this rook is already taken on a2, so I'm trying to figure out how I can accomplish that. Well, there's an issue. So let's say I don't move. Let's play the move, what doesn't move? Okay, h4. Okay. And then, if my opponent plays rook takes a2, and I play a move like knight e1, and the idea of knight e1 is it attacks his queen, and now I want to play queen takes pawn check. For example, let's move the queen away, queen takes pawn, check, queen, and I'm a genius. Okay, I win. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Problem is, if I don't make a move, and then I play knight e1, plays knight takes e5. And man, I'm not playing queen takes g6 anymore. Also, my queen needs to defend my rook on d1. So this is just, I lose everything. I could take his queen, he takes my queen, or I could play queen e2 and he moves his queen away, and I'm down 2 pawns. So I'm like, okay, I have to stop knight takes e5. So then it came to me. What if I play queen g3? That stops knight takes e5. Now when he plays rook takes pawn, I can't play knight e1 because my rook's hanging. When my queen was on g4, it defended my rook. And now if I take, it's possible he can play king h8 here. It's possible. Especially since like my bishop is hanging and I'm down like 5 pieces. Okay, then it came to me, since knight e1 hangs my rook, let's play knight takes d4. That doesn't hang my rook. Then if he takes, and then we're back into my great variation where white wins. And I was thinking to myself, which I shouldn't be doing, but what am I supposed to do? I was thinking, yeah, he's not going to see that. So if I play queen g3, he will play rook takes a2. He's not going to see knight takes d4, right? And then I was like, well, wait a minute. After knight takes d4, wow, that went back more than usual. That was, this is a good computer. Okay, I was thinking after knight takes d4, in this position, what if he doesn't take my knight and plays, I don't know, queen a4? And the idea is, after takes, just play king h8. Now my queen actually is hanging, because I don't have a check, and my knight's hanging, and my knight's hanging with check, and my e5 pawn is hanging. And I was like, I don't know what the computer's going to say about this. I don't know. So I was looking at all those variations, and then I realized I have 2 problems. My e5 pawn is hanging when I move my knight, And when his queen and rook are on the 7th rank, that's annoying. So I solved both problems. But it took me forever to find this move. And when I played it, he realized he was losing. In fact, if you have an engine like Stockfish or Komodo, and you put this position, it says Queen C2 equals. It says it's equal. And then when it finds the winning move and it thinks for 5 minutes, it says white's completely winning. But it's, yeah. So again, I want to stop the counterplay of knight takes e5, and I want to stop the counterplay of rook takes a2. So I play bishop f4. And the idea is there's never going to be a knight takes e5. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I don't have to worry about his rook and queen mating me because I play rook d2 and get rid of his rook. So he'll have no counterplay, and I'll start to mate him. And coincidentally, my pawn was hanging here on d3, but not now. So I got to do everything. Okay, so he thought a long time. And when the computer thinks a long time, it realizes that white's winning. It's very hard to take time out and play a slow move when you're playing for mate. But it's much easier to do that when you haven't sacrificed a lot of material. When you sacrifice a piece and you're trying to checkmate your opponent and you play slow moves, your opponent's a piece up. Here I'm down a pawn or I'm down nothing. I'm down nothing, right? Yeah. So I haven't sacrificed anything. So I don't have to mate him, I can just play chess. Bishop f4, I'll mate him when I feel like it, which is going to be really soon. Okay, so he took a pawn, he's finally a pawn ahead. I trade rooks, so there's no more counterplay for him on the 7th rank. And now this is actually very funny. The difference between queen h4 and queen h3. One wins and one doesn't really win. Okay, and most of the variations I looked at this game were with queen h3, so he never mates me on g2. I don't want to get mated on g2. Okay, however, in this instance, queen h4 is much better. Okay, and the reason is very simple. The only defense to his h-pawn is the move h5. When he plays h5, what am I going to do to batter him on h5? Anyone? How do I crush h5? G4. G4. After g4, if he takes on g4, I'll play knight g5 and he'll resign. That's a nice variation. And queen h7 mate. I like that variation because I'm white. Okay. And the very small difference of my queen being on h3 is now knight g5 is not so good because my queen's hanging. And I can't play queen h4 and then knight g5. He takes my, so I have to actually take and then go back to the h file and then go. So this costs me like 2 or 3 tempi, just the small difference of going to h3 or h4. Okay. So I play queen h4 and it's over. Now if he plays g5, I can take with the bishop and then take with the knight, and queen h7 mate is coming. If you play king h7, I take the pawn and play knight g5 check, as in the previous variation we looked at. So here there's just nothing to do. Okay, but he's 2300, so he finds something to do. He plays for tricks. Tricks don't work against me. Why is that, Ben Simon? That's correct. And he played queen e2. Would someone like to explain how that stops me from mating him? Why don't I play bishop h6, queen h6, queen g7 mate? What does queen e2 do about that threat? Anyone? Danny knows, but he won't say. Yeah, I could see you knew. What is this? Is this Marathon Man? You know the answer and you won't say it? Yeah. You guys know what I'm talking about? No, I guess not. Typical bright. Okay, so if bishop h6, queen h6 with unstoppable mate, queen e3 check with unstoppable queen trade, after which white has a slight advantage. Okay. Okay. But I wasn't born at night or last night, whatever's funnier. So I played rook e1, and now queen e3 check will always be risky, because I'm going to take it with my rook. Okay, he took his free pawn, and I took my free pawn. Except now I'm going to checkmate him. Black has 3 connected passed pawns. Perhaps I should resign. Okay, so yeah, everything is checkmate for me now. I can play queen h7 mate. I can play queen g7 mate. It's hard to stop any of them. I'm just getting in there. Okay, so now instead of resigning, he sacrificed his knight, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. And then he played queen to c3. Now, queen c3 doesn't attack my rook because my rook's protected. But after something like takes, now if I play queen h6, it's unstoppable mate, except he's first. Queen takes rook mate. Then I would mate him and it's a draw, right? Okay, so instead I played knight f3, which does two things. First of all, I want to protect my rook so I can give him the mate. Second of all, I don't want him to stop me from mating him, and the way to stop it is queen to d2. That would protect h6. So knight f3 stops everything. And if I don't like queen h6, queen g7 mate because it's not my style, I could play knight g5 and queen h7 mate. Either way is good. Okay, so he resigned. So that mate actually worked out, but only because my opponent played d4 and closed the center, thinking with the center closed he could win on the queen side, which was true, but I won on the king side, which he was not expecting. He thought, that attack won't work. Well, he did win on the queen side. My queen side's gone. I got nothing. But the king side attack broke through. Hooray for the good guys. Okay. He's probably more of a good guy than I am. All right. Now another game. This was the last round. Flip board. Okay, I was black in the last round against Nick Karlow. And I need to win. Because if I don't win, then they don't give me my money. So, and I've played Nick many times. And we had a draw once, and I was successful the other times. So the Nick that I know plays knight f3, g3, bishop g2. That's all he does. But he tricked me, played d4. And I was like, d4? Okay, and I play everything. So I wanted to follow the Kasparov method. Now, as all of you know, in either the third or fourth match that Karpov played Kasparov, nobody knows which one, even they don't know. They played so many matches, they can't remember. In one of the matches, Karpov was ahead 12-11 with one game to go. And Kasparov was the reigning world champion. So if he ties the match, he keeps his title. So basically, if Kasparov wins, he's the world champion. And if he draws or loses, Karpov is. And Kasparov was white. And he played boring, rady, and made the game go 1,000 moves. And in one of those 1,000 moves, Karpov made a mistake and lost the game. If the game had gone 15 or 20 moves, it's unlikely Karpov would make a mistake. If you go all out for mate at the beginning, you often get a losing position very quickly. So basically, the game was about equal for a long time. And after several hours, Karpov started to misplay the position and he lost. So I decided I would want a game that's not too exciting, but would go on and on and on and on. It's sort of a fast time control. And maybe if Nick got in time trouble, or just if the game went 60, 70, 80 moves, he would make lots of mistakes. So I wasn't trying to win right away. And Nick was playing very solid. So we had a very, very solid London system, boring, nothing going on, no trades. Okay. And if you remember my last game, and it was like 3 minutes ago, so I was pushing my pawns for kingside attack, and my opponent was pushing his pawns for queenside attack, and we both sort of broke through. Luckily, mate is more important. And this happened in this game also. So I can't play e5 right now, because white has a lot of things on e5. And I actually couldn't see the difference between playing queen e8, followed by e5, and then queen e7, or playing e6, queen e7, e5. And I was like, well, if I play queen e8, I better play e5. If I play e6, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll change my mind. So I played e6. And of course, I did not change my mind. Okay. Queen c2 is really slow and doesn't really do anything. I think he should push his queenside pawns. Then I played e5. Rook f d1, again, I don't know why the rook's on d1. It's slow. So black's equalized pretty easily. And now I decided to take the initiative. And when I was originally thinking about e5 and e4, I was thinking, well, I want to play f5, but that's illegal. And then I was wondering if my Grandmaster title could let me get it, but probably not. So I either have to play knight h5, knight e8, or move my h-pawn and then play knight h7. Well, moving my h-pawn and playing knight h7 loses a tempo. I want to move my knight right now. Knight h5 could take my knight on h5 or play g4 later. And I like knight e8. The reason I like knight e8 is when he's crashing down on the queen side, my knight's actually defending the queen side. So I actually like my knight on e8. Okay, so he crashes on the queen side. I win on the king side. He wins on the queen side. And, well, I'm sort of worried he's going to keep pushing his pawns. I'd like it to be blocked up. So I played a6. And if he pushes either pawn, I'll push the other one and block up the queen side. Although that's what I was expecting. I was expecting this, 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 and this. And I'll try to play this next move. And then I'll try to mate him on the king side when he can't really do anything on the queen side. My knight on e8 is stopping him from infiltrating. Okay, well instead, he played rook a b1 because he wanted to get off this diagonal. And I'm like, okay. And I played the move bishop h6 because I want to play f4, but not because I want to crash through with my f pawn, with my e pawn. So the idea is, if I play f4 and he takes it, I'll play e3. And he didn't want me to do that, so he played knight to f1, stopping my pawn from going to e3. Okay, and I'm like, good, his knight's on f1, his knight's going to come on the queen side and take everything. So now I'm back on the king side, he's back on the queen side, I'm on the king side, he's on the queen side. So that actually reminded me of my game with Matt Larson, because I'm losing on the queen side, but I have a good position on the king side. I'm probably not going to checkmate him because white has so many pieces in front of his king. His knights and bishops are there. On the other hand, I like the fact that his bishop is trapped. He's not exerting pressure here. Okay, and white has an obvious threat. White's threat is? Yep, forking my bishop and knight. So I play bishop to d5. After the game, I told him I thought his next move was a mistake, but the computer says it's fine. Bishop c4. And I thought the bishop was really well placed on this diagonal, stopping me from going forward. And I defended my bishop. And one of the things the computer wants white to do, which neither one of us ever considered, because we're human, is the move h4. And I'm certain if I was playing a stronger player, someone in the top 20 or 30 in the world, they would certainly think of the move h4 and probably play it. And the idea is, after a trade, this knight has a really, really nice e3 square. Some would say too nice, like me. That's a nice square for your knight. Okay, but usually when your opponent's trying to mate you, you don't play h4. Question? No question. Okay, so my opponent instead started trading on the queen side, played cb6, and he played rook to c1. He's infiltrating on the queen side, but where? I played knight e8, so he can't come in there. Okay, now I made two grandmaster moves this game. I'm not saying they were good moves. They're just moves grandmasters play that you guys don't. Your moves are probably better than mine, but I got the title, so. Okay, so to any grandmaster, this is a very obvious move, but I wouldn't expect anybody here to suggest it. And it might not even be the best move. It's just a move that is like obvious to me. I don't want my king on g8 because my bishop is pinned, and he could check me on the diagonal, and all kinds of bad stuff could happen. Also, since his bishop abandoned this diagonal, I'm going to play g4, and I'm going to crash through. I want to play rook g8 in some positions. So I play king h8. Okay, my rook will go to g8. I'll never get checked. To me, it's just an obvious move. Okay, now instead of being subtle and trying to inch his way in and do stuff, he went sort of whole hog, took queen c6 with this fork. Black has many ways to escape this fork. We can put one of the knights on c7, either knight, or the move that I played, knight to f6, defending my knight in a very drunken way, and defending my rook. Okay, and again he forges, rar, and I block it up. So his queenside counterplay doesn't look very impressive. There's nothing he can do, and his bishop on h2 is blocked, his knights are very passive, and I have a lot of space. Now, unlike a lot of games where I'm sacrificing all my pieces to checkmate my opponent, in the Matt Larson game and in this game, I didn't sacrifice anything. The material's even. If I don't mate him, it's okay. I still have a space advantage. Okay, my opponent played G4, which I thought was pretty reasonable, because I think if I play G4, that's not good for him. I'm going to crash through. I might even take here first, and then my bishop's going to be on this diagonal. I actually think G4 is okay. And here I played for a trick, and luckily it worked. Now again, I can't challenge the C file because he has the C file. He'll take my rooks. I'll play rook C8, either rook, he'll take my rook, and he'll have 2 rooks for a queen, totally dominate the C file. So I played queen E6 because I can play on the C file also. And now my opponent made a tactical error. Although if he sees the tactics and defends against them, the computer already gives black an almost winning advantage because my opponent's bishop on H2 isn't very good. It's trapped. His knights are sort of passive, and I have a lot of space. I haven't sacrificed anything. And my long-term plan that I was thinking of during the game was to move my bishop and play H5 and continue attacking. Okay, but if they make a tactical mistake, then we'll take some material. Okay, he played knight G2, and now I have a strong tactic based on the fact that I can now go to the C file now that I have all those pieces on the C file. Now, of course, if I attack his queen and his rook, that's a skewer. Unfortunately, that rook is defended. So let's undefend that rook. Let's try to make this rook move away from this rook.
Knight takes pawn.
Knight takes b4 was played. And if he doesn't take my knight, I'm threatening his queen. And knight d3 is pretty good. So he takes my knight, and I attack his queen and rook. Now, problem with playing this rook is that with the idea of protecting this pawn, is he can stay on my other rook. And if I take this rook, takes that rook. So that doesn't work. But rook a c8 works. And I thought he would take this and then take on b5. He would have a pawn for the exchange, but my rook pinning his knight, his bishop being trapped, his knight being trapped. All 3 of his minor pieces trapped. I didn't believe that. Okay, computer agrees. So he went into crazy mode, which is a good mode when you're losing. So pawn on f4. I took his queen, and he took my rook. So he has a rook and a knight for a queen, and he's threatening to take things and push things and take things and everything to take. So I thought a long time, computer doesn't like what I did, which is good, it makes the game interesting. I attacked his rook, and I attacked his other rook. And if he saves his rook, then I'm going to take this and he's just crushed. For example, black has no play, white has no play at all. Again, all his pieces are terrible. So he sacrificed more material as I expected. And the main line that I analyzed during the game was he would take on g5. I would take the rook, threatening the other rook. He would take the pawn, threatening my queen and my bishop. I would play queen f7. And he would play rook f6. As I was analyzing this, it finally dawned on me that I could play queen a2. The idea is, if you take my bishop, your rook is hanging. And if you take my rook, I can save my bishop. And if you play rook takes, then that's why I played queen a2. I actually had a reason. Yeah. Okay, so I really like that variation for black. The engines later agreed. And he didn't play f takes g5. He played f5, which is much better. Because now I don't have any counterplay down here. So I took his rook, and he took my pawn. I saved my queen. He took my bishop, and I took his center pawn. And the material is bishop and a knight and a pawn for a queen. Now, I showed this game in my advanced kids class. When I say advanced, it's not too advanced. And I said, what's worth more, a bishop, knight, and a pawn, or a queen? And the whole class said bishop, knight, and pawn. That's why it wasn't so advanced. And I beg to differ. So, okay, so a queen's better than a bishop and a knight. And black actually has something very good in this position, other than having an extra queen, is I have this passed b pawn. And there's very few white pieces in front of it. I would say none. Now his pawn, I got all of my pieces stopping it. So I'm not super worried about that. Okay, but he might want to worry about that. Okay, and in fact, I did queen that pawn. because I wanted to. Okay, so I thought he was going to play something like bishop d6 or rook d6, but he played rook e6. He wanted to play bishop e5 check and win my queen. So I played knight d3, which defends and attacks. Also, it gets out of the way of my pawn. So he defended f2, and I played king to g8. This was my second GM move of the game. I think actually the computer likes that move. So I don't want my king on h8 because bad stuff might happen. On g8, bad stuff won't happen. And again, I'm not in a hurry to win. I'm in a hurry to not let him trick me. So king g8 is really safe. I don't see how he could ever do anything. Okay, and then I started queening my pawn. And then I kept queening my pawn. And then I kept queening my pawn. Seemed like a good idea. And he played his one trick, which I had foreseen. He checked. And now, bishop e5 is almost mate, but my knight on d3 can take his bishop. So he took my knight. Now, if it was his move, bishop e5 and I would lose. I would play rook f6 and he would take it with mate. But I had foreseen this, and I had a really nice way of stopping bishop e5 by getting a queen. And then my queen stops bishop e5.
Is queen takes okay before promoting?
Queen takes which piece?
Queen takes knight.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
It's okay. He actually could play king h2, but there's no reason not to take. And then he could move his king. And again, bishop e5, you got to watch out.
Yeah, I know.
So, what? Well, I get mated. Yeah. Like this is mate, so I got to like not let him do that. Okay, so instead of giving my queen away, I didn't give my queen away. I made a queen. Now, I'm 2 queens ahead, which is nice. And I'm threatening queen takes knight, leading to mate, queen takes rook, and pawn takes rook. As they would say in Aviv's favorite movie, good luck. So after queening, he resigned. Who? What question?
No, I'm taken.
Oh, taken. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to give them any credit because then now they're going to sue us. Yeah. So that was funny that I was trying to mate him, then he was trying to mate me. That wasn't very nice. Okay. And my mating attack was sort of stopped because of his blunder. I had to win on the queen side. But if they get a blunder, I win on the queen side. So now I'm threatening mate and everything, and luckily I could defend e5. So that was good because it was the last round. Always good to win the last round. Sometimes you lose the last round, then you drive home 7 hours wondering why you lost the last round. Yeah. Now my favorite story in that ilk is I was in Chicago playing in the Chicago Open. Makes sense. And my son was also playing. And if I won the last round, I won a class prize. This sounds like this is a 30-year-old story, but this is a 4-year-old story. And they had an under 2,500 FIDE prize, and I was 2490. And I was like, under 2,500 FIDE prize. I like that. I don't win class prizes too often. So in the last round, I was playing a lower-rated Grandmaster, and I had black. And if I won, I would win like $1,000 or something. So the game went 6 hours, where I was slightly better the whole game with black, but never winning, and it was a draw. So I won nothing. And you would think it's time to go home because my 6-hour game is done. But that would be incorrect because I came with somebody and they were still playing. My 6-hour game was the shorter of the 2 games. And my son was playing Al Chow. Al Chow is a 2,300 player, former 2,300 player, from Chicago. And my son was an expert. And their game went 6 hours and 15 minutes with my son winning at the end. And didn't win any money, but usually when you drive home several hours after a long tournament, you both are like, man, we lost the last round. Yeah. Usually that's the way it goes. But this way, I was upset, but he was ecstatic that he was paired up and won a game over 6 hours and that I was doing all the driving. So he had everything. Yeah. So he took a nice nap while I slept, and I also took a nice nap, but don't tell anybody that. Yeah. Especially the cops. So that was my first slow tournament in 6 months. Hopefully I'll play another one in less than 6 months. It's possible. Also possible I won't. And I was able to win in the last round because I was paired down. So if you learn nothing from this lecture and you didn't, get paired down in the last round. Don't get paired up. That's tough.